Welcome to the Bootstrapped Innovation Interview Series, where I host 10-minute power chats with entrepreneurs, investors, and corporate innovators on how they're applying the bootstrapping mindset to their business. Today's guest is Stephen Turban. Stephen is the co-founder of Lumiere Education and Leverage Assistance. Stephen's background includes time at McKinsey & Company, a statistics degree from Harvard College. His company, Lumiere Education, currently operates 4 thriving education brands, each generating 7-figure revenues, the global team of 70-plus employees. Stephen also recently started Leverage Assistance, a global staffing company that places the top 1% of executive assistants with founders. Prior to his entrepreneurial ventures, Stephen was pursuing a PhD at Harvard Business School. Stephen, welcome. Thanks for being here, buddy.
Thanks for having me. Excited to talk about bootstrapping.
Yeah, man, it's a passion topic of mine. So much that when I sold SmartBid in 2018, I wrote a book called Be Your Own VC, and encapsulate all my bootstrapping principles and rules that really are just common knowledge among bootstrappers, but not so common in business schools. I got an undergrad and master's in business school here at Texas A&M, and I didn't talk much about bootstrapping.
Totally.
I mean, what about you with Harvard?
So I was at Harvard's undergrad and then briefly as a PhD student at HBS, and I would say my friend group, everyone was talking about raising venture capital. I actually didn't know anyone who was bootstrapping. When I started Lumiere, the initial company, I was based in Vietnam, and there's this one thing in Vietnam which I think is kind of funny. In Vietnam, I always think like the line I think about is it's not cool to raise money. It's cool to be rich. And so all of the successful business people in Vietnam didn't raise money. There wasn't venture capital. It wasn't a thing. And so I just got exposed, luckily, when I was starting the company, to people who are just hustling, bootstrapping. And so, but I wasn't exposed at all when I was going to college. Not at all.
Exactly. It's a little bit of I've always thought it was kind of weird how much fanfare and publicity there is when people raise money. I'm like, why are you celebrating that you owe other people money? Like, let's celebrate like revenue, celebrate revenue milestones, or celebrate profitability, or celebrate. Like I recently saw a VC funded company that I'm really good friends with announce that they had hit break-even profitability. And I celebrated. I was like, hell yeah, that's something that we're going to have. Like that should be a way bigger press release than any of your fundraising announcements. But you bootstrapped both these companies, Lumiere and Leverage. Why was this really important to you? And you like me didn't hear anything from your peer group about this, in school. So why was it important to you, and how did it shape your journey as an entrepreneur?
For me, I didn't grow up really exposed to entrepreneurship at all. My dad's a professor. He's an amazing family, like kind of educators. But my dad's professor because he was really liked the idea of not having a boss. If you're like a tenured professor, you kind of just do whatever, for good or for bad. You can do whatever you want. In his case,
for better or worse, yes.
Exactly. I mean, he's like a super productive like business school researcher, but you can do whatever you want. And I think I just kind of grew up the same way, where when I was working at McKinsey, I think I was fine, but I don't think I was an amazing kind of McKinsey soldier. And largely because I just didn't really like the feeling of having someone else tell me what to do and not being able to kind of pursue. I think of the idea of like opportunity sniffing. I think one thing I really like to do, and I'm relatively good at, is identifying opportunities. And oftentimes if you have a boss, no fault of their own, they don't like it when you kind of sniff out new opportunities and try new things. And so for me, I just felt like the idea of having investors, especially kind of institutional investors who are kind of saying, hey, do this, don't do this. Like, did you hit this number? I just didn't really feel very exciting. And luckily my companies are kind of these cash flow positive businesses that allow you to not raise money. And so pretty quickly I realized I didn't need to. And so then that's why I didn't. But it's really, for me, it was about autonomy at first. It wasn't so strategic. It's more just like, I really don't want to have a boss. Yeah.
It's hilarious is that's the exact same reason I didn't take a full-time offer from my internship and I started this business.
Really?
Yeah,
totally.
I kept getting in trouble at my internship, and they still offered me a full-time job because I worked at a big at the time, Big 5 accounting firm. And I was at an airline that was my client. And I would hang out at the lunchroom. I didn't eat with my coworkers. I ate with the airline the people that worked at the client. And I ended up selling work as an intern because I just really desperately wanted to work on something else. So awesome. I made friends and I sold work as an intern. And then my boss is like, what the hell? What intern sells work? And I'm like, hey man, there was an opportunity. They needed help over there, and I thought it would be cool to work on. And the reality was, my project was not interesting. I was sharing a cube with two other dudes who didn't take showers, and it was really smelly. And I was like, man, I got to get out of this cubicle. And the only way to get out. So it's so funny how like aversion theory, like you're just trying to get away from stuff.
Totally.
And being told
Totally.
what to do, it definitely will drive you to do some stuff. I mean, so like your business leverage is a new one. So I'm going to talk about that in a second. But Lumiere creates research and mentorship opportunities for students. So, what inspired you to start that first business, Lumiere, and how did you
Yeah,
identify the market? Like that's really hard to that first step of identifying and
totally.
achieving product market fit.
Yeah, so I always think about, so one concept I think a lot about is the idea of, I call it like textbook reading. So textbook reading for me is the idea of looking at a competitor and instead of treating them as a rival, treating them as like a textbook, someone that you want to read and understand. And so what happened was that I was working at McKinsey. I ended up transferring to China. I speak Chinese because I grew up kind of in Asia. And I saw this type of company in Asia, which is kind of a research program. And I was starting my PhD program, and I just thought, man, that's so weird. I haven't seen this type of company before outside of China. I haven't seen it in the US or in Vietnam or India. And so I thought, oh, let me kind of read up on the textbook. And so I just went like really deep into a few companies in China and thought, yeah, this probably will work if it's working in China. And so for me, that's one big way I de-risk a lot of these like new ideas is I kind of just see, is someone else doing it? Or are they kind of making usually a bunch of money or like revenue or whatever, usually good signals. And that was how I initially had the idea. And I was also a PhD student. So it was a pretty good, I think, like founder company fit, if you will. So people thought, yeah, this PhD student doing this research program checks out. Doesn't seem so weird. But it was really just looking at other companies saying, oh, cool, you're doing it. I could probably also do it.
Yeah, how does it make money?
So yeah, so it's a pretty simple model. It's like a summer camp. So students will pay tuition to work with a researcher. So it's between $2,000 to $4,000, and then the researcher is really acting as a tutor. So they're really helping a student guide them in their own individual project. And students are thinking about this because they're often thinking about applying to college and trying to figure out how can I showcase my interests in a more deep way. And then we pay some percentage of that tuition back to the researcher to support them. And it's like for them, it's like a sweet gig. They get paid a lot and they get to work with like really nerdy, ambitious students in the topics that they research.
So you're having to convince students to pay you tuition to join this,
Exactly.
but they have a
Exactly.
hard time finding these kind of matches without a system like this.
Yeah, exactly. Like I did research in high school, but it's because my dad, as a professor, introduced me. And so we're essentially taking this like something that's very much like your family connection type value add and just making it into a bit more productized and making it into like a really structured and respected program for admission officers, so they know that hey, if someone does Lumiere, this is a legit program. The students are really hustling, and so a university can trust the work is authentically the students, and the student can trust they're going to get a great mentor. So that we're kind of just building a little trust in the system, yeah, for to make it feasible for all sides.
That's awesome. And then you recently decided to start Leverage, which helps founders find assistants. Now, was this from you finding a great assistant and then you wanting to replicate that for others?
Yeah, exactly. So, and I know you have a team also in South Africa. I just had this amazing assistant, Shannon, who still works with me, based in Johannesburg, and she was just incredible. And my team is mainly based out of the US, maybe like 95% of the team. And um, I just had a bunch of friends saying, oh my God, like they saw that I was doing all these things. I was like more responsive. Shannon usually like impersonates me for a lot of my messaging. And so they're like, and I was telling my friends, like, it's like a superpower. And they just didn't really know how to hire great assistants or use them or train them. And so started Leverage really kind of spun out of our own hiring function to then help other founders do it. And it's a really simple model. We hire, train, and staff really talented assistants in South Africa and the Philippines, and then they work with founders who are ambitious but time constrained, and we help the founders with delegation coaching and help them get the most out of a system.
That's awesome. That's really great. And how's it going?
Yeah, really well, really well. We have like 20 clients we're working with pretty actively the first like 8 months. I think it's going well. I think for sure, in retrospect, starting a adjacent company is easier than starting a totally new company. So to me, that's like an obvious lesson I should have taken. But you sometimes you got to scratch the itch. I feel like you're that way. You're kind of like, I kind of want to do this thing. I just
Yeah.
have to like scratch the itch. So that was for me. That was leverage. I was like, I just think I should do it. I did it. you know?
I can tell you, running two insurance technology firms, having adjacency helps me a lot.
Right.
When I had insurance and construction, it drove me bananas because I really couldn't be in the same headspace for both
Yeah,
companies. And so having JB Knowledge and SmartBid was way harder than having JB Knowledge and Terra.
totally.
And
That's
so yeah.
Yeah, and that's my lesson essentially. I'm kind of like, oh, okay, this is actually harder. Whereas when the Lumiere, we've started adjacent brands, and that's way easier because it's all within kind of like the high school education space.
Yeah.
So that's way easier than starting something totally new. That should be obvious to me, but it wasn't.
So, so well, you know, um, bootstrapped entrepreneurs are also known for being pretty stubborn and having to learn the hard way. So, join the club. It's all good.
Yeah,
The hardest lessons are the best ones. And
totally, totally.
so speaking of lessons, I mean, just give me 3, 4, 5 big bootstrapping lessons and how it influences you now.
Yeah, so just maybe some quick lessons. One, leverage over efficiency. So this was a huge lesson for me, which was that I always looked at like really like people I admired, mentors, and they just look so chill. And I was like, why are you so chill? That you run this like massive company. I'm hustling out here, taking all these sales calls. And it took me a while to realize that it's not about being efficient. And I'm a pretty efficient person. I have all the shortcuts, etc. It's about getting leverage, which for a lot of people can mean hiring other people quickly or creating systems or technology to leverage yourself. So leverage over efficiency is a big one. Another big lesson is where you target the market is not where you need to staff the team. So to me, that's a big one that I've learned where now the US is our biggest market, but almost, we have a few people in the US, but 95% of the team is outside the US. And I think a lot of people conflate the two where it's like the market I target has to be the market I hire in. I found that that's just not true.
All right. So this close out, like if you gave potential aspiring entrepreneurs advice, what would be like the one thing you tell them to do if they're thinking about jumping into building a business and bootstrapping?
Yeah, I would say there are lots of good textbooks, so just go and read them. Like I think it's too much. We emphasize the idea of you have to create these really original ideas, and then you try to go original, doesn't work, you get discouraged, and then you say, "I'm not an entrepreneur." When there's thousands of businesses out there that you could learn from, so just go out, do your homework, read some textbooks, and read the textbooks of other businesses, and then apply them.
Yeah, I
To
think in your case, especially, like look at proven models in other countries and just bring it to your country. I mean,
100%, 100%.
anyway,
There's so much of that. I think there's hundreds of companies that can be built. Just going, looking at China, saying what companies exist, and then bringing them to Vietnam, or even bring them to the U.S. or vice versa. Like that's a many lifetimes of companies to be
yeah,
built there.
yeah. You don't have to always be original.
Totally.
That's yeah. What's your my last curious question? What's your
Yeah.
favorite thing about Vietnam?
Vietnam, the best thing about it is the energy. If the place is changing every year, if you just look at the skyline, like I live in Ho Chi Minh City, half the skyscrapers weren't there 5 years ago. So you just look around, you're just consumed by the energy of the place that's changing. So recommend everyone to come. I think it's the best place on earth right now.
Wow. And then you're currently in New York City, which is one of my favorite places in North
Also a great
America.
place.
Super, super great energy, but not the same. It doesn't have the same energy of like rampant growth anymore. It's like
For sure.
New York is like the established big city. Like Ho Chi Minh's like the up and coming
Yeah.
fast growth city, right?
100%.
That-
100%.
That's awesome. So people can link up with you on LinkedIn. His name is Stephen Turban, StephenTurban. Stephen Turban. You can hit him up there. He'll be linked in the notes, but also go check out his companies. And if you're a founder, you need some assistance, check out Leverage, or if you are in education, check out Lumiere. Stephen, thank you so much for taking some time with us.
Thanks, James. It was so much fun.
Awesome.